Duane Eddy was born on April 26, 1938 in Corning, New York, but his story truly began in the red desert sprawl of Arizona, where his family moved when he was still a child. Surrounded by wide skies and vast emptiness, young Duane found both solitude and rhythm in the stillness of the American Southwest. His father, a railroad worker, had a penchant for music and often played old records at home. These early sounds etched themselves into Duane's memory, planting seeds that would flourish in extraordinary ways. The guitar found him when he was 5. An older neighbor let him strum a few chords on an old acoustic, and from that moment it became his obsession. By the time he was 12, he had convinced his parents to buy him a Sears Roebuck model, cheap, tinny, but in his hands it sang. What he lacked in finesse, he made up for in instinct. He didn't play to impress, he played to feel. Duane wasn't interested in mimicking jazz runs or country croons. Instead, he was fascinated by deep tones, drawn to the lower strings, bending notes into something that felt primal. It was as if the desert itself had given his music a voice. Raw, full of space, echoing far beyond what most guitars could muster. In his teenage years, Eddy met the man who would change everything, Lee Hazelwood, a disc jockey and producer with an ear for the strange and a taste for sonic rebellion. Hazelwood had been working out of a small Phoenix radio station when he encountered Duane performing with his group, the Jimmy Dell Trio. Something about Duane's approach, heavy bass, clipped melodies, lean but deliberate, caught his attention. Together, they set out to create something that didn't yet exist. Hazelwood had access to a studio and a few musicians. Duane had his guitar and a relentless desire to find his own sound. They experimented with reverb, echo chambers, and mic placement. Out of these sessions came a unique method. Duane would pick melodies on the bass strings, while engineer Eddie Brackett bathed them in cavernous reverb. Their first breakout track was Movin' and Groovin', recorded in 1957. Raw and kinetic, the instrumental grabbed the attention of Jamie Records, a Philadelphia-based label that took a gamble and signed Eddy. It was the beginning of a partnership that would place Duane at the center of the instrumental rock revolution. Everything changed in 1958 with the release of Rebel Rouser. The song launched with a war cry of saxophone and then gave way to Duane's signature guitar tone. Thick, moody, unmistakable. It reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for weeks. Suddenly, Eddy wasn't just a local curiosity. He was a charting artist competing with vocal stars and rockabilly icons. Rebel Rouser was followed by a torrent of hits: Ramrod, Cannonball, 40 Miles of Bad Road, and Peter Gunn. Each was distinct but shared a DNA that was wholly Duane's, bold, spacious, driven by the low-end hum of a Gretsch 6120 guitar. His sound became known as twang, a term often used affectionately or derisively, but for Duane it was a badge. He had made the guitar speak a different language, one that resonated with kids who didn't need lyrics to feel something. His songs spoke of wide roads, fistfights behind gas stations, lovers leaving town, all told through bending notes and echoing riffs. Part of Duane's power came from his collaborators. Alongside Hazelwood and Brackett, he assembled a studio band that included some of the best in the business: Steve Douglas on sax, Al Casey on rhythm guitar, Larry Knechtel on keys. These musicians weren't hired guns. They were co-conspirators in a sonic rebellion. The arrangements were lean but layered. Every note was placed with purpose. While other instrumentalists leaned on novelty or gimmicks, Duane kept things rooted. He refused to dilute his style for trends, even when surf rock began to dominate the early 60s. He never viewed himself as a surf guitarist, despite inspiring an entire movement. His sound predated it, and in many ways dwarfed it. In the early 60s, Eddy's fame extended beyond the music charts. He appeared in films like Because They're Young and toured internationally. In Britain, he was adored. His records charted higher there than back home, in some cases. At the height of Beatlemania, Paul McCartney named him one of his favorite guitarists. But the constant travel, studio sessions, and promotional demands took their toll. Duane married singer Jessie Coulter, then known as Miriam Johnson, and though they shared a deep bond and a daughter, the pressures of the road and artistic differences pulled them apart. They divorced in 1968. It was a heavy period for Eddy, personally and professionally. The British invasion shifted attention away from instrumental rock, and though he continued to record, chart success became sporadic. Yet Duane remained active, releasing music through the 70s, collaborating with artists like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, and reuniting with Hazelwood for occasional sessions. He remarried in 1979 to Dee DeBate, a relationship that brought peace and stability. They settled in Franklin, Tennessee, where Duane could finally slow down and reflect on the strange road he'd traveled. The 1980s brought a fresh wave of appreciation. Artists like George Harrison, Bruce Springsteen, and John Fogerty cited him as an early inspiration. Then, in 1986, a remarkable revival occurred. Duane collaborated with Paul McCartney, Jeff Lynne, and George Harrison on a new album. The result was Duane Eddy, released in 1987 to wide acclaim. In 1994, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame opened its doors to him. The honor may have been long overdue, but Duane accepted it with quiet satisfaction. He never sought accolades. He valued the music above the machinery that sold it. He spent the following years mentoring younger players, including Dan Auerbach of the Black Keys, and appearing on tribute albums and documentaries. He didn't bask in nostalgia. He remained curious, always exploring new ways to make his guitar sound like no one else's. In the spring of 2024, Duane Eddy's health began to falter. He had been living quietly, still occasionally performing at local venues and festivals, but longtime friends noticed a fatigue that wasn't there before. By autumn, he was in and out of the hospital. Those closest to him said he faced illness with the same cool resolve he brought to every session. There was no panic, no outbursts, just a calm acceptance and a refusal to let the weight of mortality extinguish his humor. He spent his final days at home in Franklin, surrounded by family and close friends. His guitar rested by his bedside. On quiet afternoons, he would pluck a few chords, often in a slow, mournful key, but always with purpose. Each note hung in the air like a memory. On January 30th, 2025, Duane Eddy died peacefully at the age of 86. News spread quickly, and tributes poured in. He had outlived many of his contemporaries, and yet his departure still felt abrupt, as if that low guitar growl should never fall silent. Radio stations across the globe played Rebel Rouser in tribute. Younger musicians spoke about learning his songs in dusty garages. Vintage record stores sold out of his albums, yet none of it felt sufficient. For those who had been moved by that unmistakable tone, his absence was deafening. Duane Eddy didn't ride trends. He created space for them to form. He never played to the gallery, never chased chart positions with desperation. He once said he wanted to sound like a freight train moving through the desert at midnight. He succeeded. He didn't need to speak on stage. His guitar did all the talking, and even now, when someone plugs into an amp, turns the reverb up just enough, and hits that low string with a slow bend, Duane's shadow is right there. The man may have gone quiet, but his sound lives on in every echo.